Welcome, NFL fans. Welcome to the channel, everyone. This is going to be a weekly series where I'm going to be reviewing some of the bigger takeaways and storylines from week one and then project out the final records based on what we've seen sort of each week. So here are sort of the biggest storylines and takeaways I have from week one. So we have Green Bay. Looks like they are going to continue where they left off. Phillies is sort of the same thing. They're going to be one of the very good, but maybe not the elite teams in the NFC. They went, head to head, back and forth game, really exciting game, probably one of the best games of the year so far. But losing Jordan Love like that for a few weeks could be really devastating for them. His NFC is just much more competitive than it's been in the past. Moving on to the Vikings game, the Vikings really beat down on the Giants, who are looking like the bottom has really fallen out with them, and they're going to be probably a bottom 5 team this year. I'm looking at sort of Sam Darnold and how he did. It really shows that when you have a top tier talent like Justin Jefferson, it really elevates that quarterback play. It makes it so much easier, and not really something that he had at the Jets and at the Panthers and stuff. Not saying that he's a starting caliber quarterback, but the difference between him and the 25th best quarterback is probably not as big as a lot of these teams would like to think. I'm going to the Cardinals game. Tough game against the Bills. Obviously, a lot of mistakes. A lot of the stuff that the Bills could have done better to sort of just pull away. But I really think the Cardinals are going to be a tough out. They have a strong running game. Kyler Murray is back to sort of his athletic, where he's been in the past. And I think that they may not win as much as Cardinals fans would like, but I really think they're going to be in the game. Kind of thinks back to Patriots of last year, where they were always it was always competitive and they were always close, but maybe just one drive that falls short that kind of where the other team's able to pull away. But I would really look at the Cardinals in the second half of the season to really be a dominant team, and we kind of saw that a little bit last year. But so I think they're gonna take some time to build on because they're adding Marvin Harrison Jr. But I really think ending this year, going into next year, I think that's where they make their final push. So talking about sort of the AFC a little bit more. I think the Ravens fans should be really concerned. The offense just really didn't look good. Lamar didn't look comfortable. The offensive line didn't protect him. They had a lot of scripted plays, a lot of different things like that. But they didn't really have a lot, except for a couple big splash plays, which I know that's sort of Lamar is known for. But it just doesn't look good. And he's going to need to play after, when the play breaks down, make those big plays, big splash plays. He was scrambling a lot, getting hit a lot, and I just don't see, him being able to do that for 17 games. So, maybe, they kind of come back to the drawing board, maybe try to figure out ways to sort of build up the offense, make it a little simpler. More downfield. I think it was a little too on the sideline. When you have someone like Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins can do that, but the Ravens don't have anyone even closely as explosive as Tyreek. So it's just not the kind of a little bit of baffling, but it does make me think that they really don't trust that offensive line. So something to be concerned on. But on the other hand, with the Chiefs, they're really looking like they're going to be a top team. I think they're probably going to be a number 1 seed this year. Going to probably take a step back a little bit on the defensive side, but on the offensive side, they're going to be much more explosive, not reliant on those methodical drives as much as they were last year. And I think it's going to require Mahomes to be on his game, but hey, Mahomes is the best player in the league. I think he can do it. So I think it's looking really good for the Chiefs. So next we're going to have I want to talk about the Bengals and the Patriots game. It looks like both these teams are going to be kind of mediocre, which is a great sign for the Pats, right? But they're kind of concerning for the Bengals. This might be sort of the best time for the Bengals to make that final push before they, the Burrow deal's in. They still have to start paying Jamar Chase. You already saw them get rid of Mixon, which is, I don't know if that was as much of a cap casualty versus trying to have a different running style, but he's a very good back. So this is going to be one of their last pushes, and if they're always sort of struggling in the early part of the season, it really affects later in the season. And seeding does make a difference, especially getting that first round bye. Obviously, you're not playing, so you don't have to worry about losing. But even just getting the rest, it's a longer season than it was, 5-6 years ago. Adding that extra game without getting an extra bye week really helps. So kind of continuing to talk about, mediocrity with some of these players. Obviously Bryce Young just isn't really looking like the past year. Like it really looks like the last year really messed with him. In college, he wasn't maybe the most gifted quarterback, but he really played within the offense. Right now he looks like someone who knows that he needs to be perfect to dominate other teams, and he's really pressing. He's throwing balls where they don't belong. He's really trying to add extra power because he doesn't want the receivers to be to come in and intercept it, and it's just something that's not really his game. He's sort of forcing it. He's sort of not going through like a quarterback. He's not using his fundamentals. He's trying to arm throw as opposed to using your whole body to sort of torque it. So very sort of concerning early on. I think it could be maybe just week one jitters, and maybe they can kind of get together a little bit, new coaching staff, all that sort of stuff. But it just looks again like the Panthers are probably the worst team in the league right now. We'll see sort of what happens moving forward. Going sort of off of Bryce Young, going to the other sort of pick, which will always be tied in. The Caleb Williams and Bryce Young will always be connected because of that trade. But Caleb Williams really showed why a lot of people think the preseason is pointless. He was really rough in this game. He needed a defensive and a special teams touchdown to get the victory, and the Titans are by no means a strong team. The difference in running college style based coverages versus the more complex NFL defenses, just completely different. In the end, looking back to Mahomes' rookie year, I think might be part of the reason why he was able to hit the ground running, because he was able to absorb everything going on his rookie year, which really helped him to become who he is. Alex Smith was a really smart quarterback, really understood the game. So he was able to see how he broke things down, how he analyzed what's going on. And Caleb Williams doesn't have that luxury. And I think it really showed. Everyone is fast in the NFL, even defensive tackles. And there's just a lot of stuff going on that he hasn't seen, especially in the Pac-12, which is just not known for its defense. They have some good players, but just overall, just their defenses are usually pretty bad. So I think he'll get it, but it's just going to take some time. I think there's a lot of hype around him basically coming in as a top 10, top 15 quarterback, and that's just not realistic. That almost never happens. Very few players like that. And he definitely has a different play style. So he's not your standard Peyton Manning kind of type quarterback, right? So, okay, so that's sort of this week in a nutshell. Some of the key takeaways, there's obviously a lot more games. There's a lot more stuff going on, but just sort of to kind of keep it succinct, that's sort of kind of the major takeaways that I had of week one. So now let's go ahead and sort of look at the standings and project out how we think they're going to look so far. So starting in the AFC, we're going to start in the AFC East. The 1-0 Bills showed that they're going to pretty much go as far as Josh Allen takes them. I think everyone knew that going in. Assuming his hand injury doesn't really affect him that badly, I have them going 12-5. I think, probably 10 is their ceiling, maybe 13, 14 wins or 10 or 11 is their floor, maybe 13, 14 wins is their ceiling. I don't really see them going either way. I think 12-5 is going to go, but again, that hand injury, if he does have to miss time, obviously I don't really see them winning too many games if that's the case. Then going into the Dolphins, they really overcame a horrible first half to sneak out a win against a Jags team that's probably going to be sort of, in the middle of the league, somewhere between 15 to 20 best record. The Dolphins are going to probably again dominate some mediocre teams. They're going to play some good teams. Other teams they're going to play kind of and then at the end of the season, I see him as a wild card team again at 11-6. Now going on to the Jets, Aaron Rodgers really showed that he hasn't played meaningful football in 2 years, and he's going to take some time to get on the same page with his targets. The O-line didn't look that great, to be honest, but you're playing San Francisco, so not many O-lines do. I have them finishing 9-8 mainly because I think it's going to take some time for them to get on the right path, and I'm going to really see them as being competitive in the second half of the season. But I think it's just not going to come together in a way that it would have if obviously if Rodgers had played last year. Just not going to happen. All right. So then lastly, with the Patriots, who had a really nice win. I think they're going to be in almost every single game, unless if their offense really just can't generate any points. I think they're gonna lose more than they win, and they'll still end 6-11. But I think Drake May takes over around week 9 when they're sort of below 500, and that contributes to it a little bit. I think maybe there could potentially be a 7 or 8 win team if they stay with Jacoby Brissett the whole year. But at the same time, it's like, why? There has to become a time where you're building towards the future. You can't just be like, let's just maximize the win so we can have the 12th overall pick instead of the 9th overall pick. It's like, it doesn't really matter. So I think they will sort of do a little worse as they sort of say, okay, let's just focus in towards the future. All right, so next, going into the AFC West, the Chiefs, I don't see them being as dominant on defense this year, but they're gonna, kind of regain their big play potential as we talked about. So I think they get the number 1 spot and end the season 13-4. Pretty simple. Chargers, they're going to be competitive and will probably make the playoffs after missing it last year, playing teams well but losing both times to the Chiefs. So I think they're going to be a competitive team, probably in more games than they're completely blown out in, but obviously not quite competitive with the Chiefs. I have the Broncos and Raiders. They're both going to be top 5 picks. I think both these teams are going to be bad because of spotty quarterback play. I think this is going to be another offseason where John Elway, wishes that he had drafted Josh Allen, like we heard come out this offseason. And I think the Raiders are going to get their quarterback of the future, taking one of the top prospects. So now going to the AFC North, I think the Ravens are once again going to win the division. It's going to be one of the more competitive divisions. I think they're going to have a dominant second half of the season. And once Lamar gets more trust in his O-line and they start playing better, he's going to have better timing with his receivers. So I think the Steelers are once again going to have a winning record. They're going to remain mediocre like they have in probably the last 4 seasons or so. They're going to show that neither Justin Fields nor Russell Wilson is really a starting caliber quarterback anymore. And I think they're going to continue this sort of process for a while until they can figure it out. Either make a trade up, get lucky with a quarterback who drops, who happens to develop. But I think it's what most people thought with their quarterback situation, that they have 2 mediocre quarterbacks that aren't necessarily going to win most of those games. So I think the Bengals, again, are going to start slow as they always do. They're going to finish 10-7, make the playoffs as, I think, the last wild card team. I think despite some of the issues that they're going to have, they're going to be dangerous in the playoffs. You're not going to want to get the Bengals in your wild card matchup. I think on paper, in terms of their record, they're going to be much worse than their actual team is going to be at the end of the season. So lastly, the Browns. I think this year is going to be really rough for Browns fans personally. I would have said that they could have gotten out of the deal after this year, but then they restructured 2 years in a row and just pushing that money in, and it's all guaranteed. And I just don't think that they're going to be able to do that. I think they're going to be stuck through the 2025 season, so sort of 2 more years of Deshaun Watson, and I think it's going to be really rough on them. I think there's the potential they may need to consider trading away some of they're still very good, but aging players, because I just don't see them making that push anytime soon. So I think they're going to go 5-12 this year. I think it's going to be sort of maybe they get a developmental quarterback. I know that I think they drafted one. I'm trying to remember their name, but I think they drafted Jordan Travis. Remember? No, that was the Jets. I forget who it was, but I feel like that they did draft someone who could be a developmental quarterback. So I think they're going to be one of the worst teams this year, unfortunately for Browns fans. And then lastly, in the AFC, we have the AFC South. Okay, so the Texans look like they're going to once again dominate the South. Although if Indy sort of shows that they're a middling team, week 1 this win doesn't look as good. Diggs looks like he's a new player in Houston, and he's benefiting from playing with a really good young quarterback with weapons around him. We'll sort of see how it goes throughout the season. Things might change. He kind of fell off in the second half of the season last year with the Bills, so we'll kind of see how that goes. But the rest of the AFC South teams, they all lost. So the Jags were a fumble away from a guaranteed win against Miami. I see them finishing 10-7. They'll beat bad teams. They'll win against some decent ones. They're probably going to get blown out by a lot of really good teams. But I see them missing the playoffs because of some of those tiebreakers. I think the Colts are going to be obviously much better than they were last year. Definitely more explosive. But they're still a year away. I think they're going to rely too much on those big plays. They're not going to have a consistent offense, and it's going to really sort of set them back in some games, because some teams are going to just be like, play safe, like they have the back end talent. Like, go ahead, and I want to see you, drive down the field. They're not going to be able to do it consistently, and then they'll be able to pull away. So I think it'll be a little while till the Colts, but I think they're on the right path. They have a plan, as opposed to some other teams who are kind of like, I'm not really sure what the plan is. So we have the Titans on the other hand. I think they're going to be more competitive than they should be, just like they were in the Vrabel era. But I think they're only going to finish with five wins this year. I think they're gonna struggle on offense. I think they're gonna be kind of porous on the defense, and I think when teams start to pull away, they're gonna kind of lift their foot off the gas. I think Vrabel, one good thing he was very, very good at is really keeping that pressure on, and keeping his team motivated, even if they're down by 14 points in the third quarter. Like, let's go, and kind of leading them. So that's sort of the AFC, sort of where I see the schedule right now. But let's go ahead and talk about the NFC. So NFC East, we got Dallas beat down on Cleveland. If Dak and the Dallas defense can keep this up, I see them winning the NFC East, but not being a dominant team like across the league, but very dominant within their division for sure. The Eagles I see as a wild card team this year, just by being a game behind the Cowboys for the division. I think they're a stronger overall team last year, but they were over-reliant on the tush push last year, and I think it's going to come back to bite them, because we saw in the game, the Packers are definitely not a dominant defense by any means, and it really wasn't a functional play without Jason Kelce. I think that was something that maybe the NFL kind of overlooked in terms of why that play was so dominant, and I don't think it has to do as much with Jalen Hurts. I think he's very good at that kind of play, and he's a very strong player. But I think it had to do with the way that Jason Kelce snapped, and how much movement he could get like right away on players, and not like people dive, push them down, push people back, all that sort of stuff. So going to the Commanders, I think they are going to play well this year. I think they're going to lose a lot more games than they win. I think they're only going to get four wins this year, but they're going to play much better than 4-win teams usually do. I think Jaden Daniels showed week 1 that he has the speed that a lot of people overlooked. They kind of saw him as a pocket quarterback, and I don't know if he's as great right now at sort of creating on the run, sort of those off-scripted plays, but he's definitely quick. He's definitely fast, and he can definitely scramble at this level and outrun a lot of people. So I think we'll kind of see if he's able. I know that health is always a problem, so a concern with him. Smaller build, but if he's able to sort of withstand some of the NFL hits without it kind of being too bad, I could actually see him having more designed runs for him in year 2. Obviously, he's not going to be like trucking anyone or anything like that, but I could definitely see some quarterback draws and some, maybe not powers, but sweeps or something like that for Jaden Daniels in year 2. But I think first, make sure he can withstand the contact before you start sending him out there. So I think the Giants are, like I said before, they're going to hit rock bottom this year. I don't know if the ownership is patient enough to allow the Giants to like rebuild around like a rookie QB. But after this year, I think that's really what they need to do. I think they need to pair someone. You have Neighbors. You need to pair Neighbors with someone else. I think they're going to be in line for a top 3 pick, and could potentially grab one of the in the list of sort of talented QBs. I think now with the way the league is, it's kind of a little crazy, but you kind of need to get the best signal caller. You really need the first pick, and I don't know if, because of the Panthers, I don't know if they're going to be in line for that, but I do think they're going to be one of the worst teams this year right now. So next to the NFC West. So the past game that we saw on Monday night really shows why the Niners are not just a good team with an amazing running back, but they're like a well-oiled machine that can move the ball against top-tier defenses as long as they have their core players. You can't be missing 6 starters on offense and be able to maintain it. But if you missing one piece, it's really not a big deal. I think part of the reason why they brought Ayuk back was because they saw like what their potential could be, and that he's a part of that, right? Maybe not somewhere else. He may not be as good, but with where he is in that offense, I think he's the perfect complement to what they have. So they're going to need to see kind of what happens with Ricky Pearsall. I know that horrible sort of event sort of really put that back. Fortunately, he's going to be able to come back this year, but I think we won't really see what he is in that offense probably towards the second half of the season, just because basically the first half of the season between practicing and playing has been sort of stolen from him, which is too bad. But I do see him maybe more so in the playoffs and the end of the season. If they are sort of a number one seed, then I think, we use him to buy. They can maybe throw him out there a couple of games, maybe let him start, if you're going to rest some of your starters, that sort of stuff. I see the Rams are going to be a competitive team. I think they came close to winning one against one of the better teams in the Lions. They have great coaching. Matthew Stafford shows how good he could have been his whole career if we get a better team around him. So I think that they're definitely going to be one of the better non-division winning teams. So I think Seahawks, they're going to be one of those teams that everyone roots for, but just not quite good enough to make the playoffs. They're always going to be like very close, but just on the outside a little bit. Geno Smith, he's the perfect bridge quarterback, but the problem is that he's not a bridge to anything. No, he's not yet. I mean, they don't really they didn't draft someone who shows promise, but he really needs to learn. And so it might be time this year or in the draft this upcoming year, grab a developmental rookie, keep Geno around for another, maybe 1 to 2 years, let that person take over when he's ready. And then the Cardinals, kind of like I said, they're going to impress a lot of teams while having a winning record or having a losing record. The game against the Bills showed that I think the Cardinals can be super competitive, even if they have a subpar defense. The way that they ran the ball in the first half is really going to be sort of a difference maker for them the whole season. If they can have a functional run offense, have a few wow plays a game, then they can really limit their mistakes. In this past game, Kyler's strip sack, was kind of negated by that kickoff return for a touchdown. So, I think the Cardinals are going to be like a really fun team this year to watch. Whether you root for them or not, I think, if your team's not playing at that time and you have Sunday ticket, whatever, or just whatever's the local, happens to be the local game, turn them on. I think they're going to be fun. They may not be good, but I think they're going to be fun. Okay, so now we're going to go over to the NFC North. So the Lions, again, looked really impressive against the Rams this year. They're continuing off from where they left off last playoffs. They have an impressive core of players that, kind of let Jared Goff play within the system. Assuming that they lose their offensive coordinator after this year, they're kind of in the win now mode. I'm not 100% sure if Goff could continue this kind of hot streak under a different system. So I think it's going to be vital that the Lions make the Super Bowl push this year, as, continued success isn't guaranteed. It's not like the second Jared Goff came in the league, he was one of the better quarterbacks, because the reality is if he probably would have been traded. So I think he's just in the right situation. They've got the right players around him. They're asking him to do the right things, and it's just like this perfect situation. So if anything changes with that, it's not guaranteed that it's going to continue. Okay, so next to the Bears, they did win, but obviously, like I said before, definite concerns about the offense and Caleb Williams' ability to hit the ground running. Definitely overhyping to expect them to come in and be like a top 15 quarterback. Right now, I'm projecting them to be 7-10 was their record, but I think it's going to be like a major push next season. I think they're going to be, again, one of those teams that at the end of the season, they're going to be a much better team. They're going to be playing better than a 7-10 team. And obviously, their ceiling is much higher, but I think that's probably around where they're going to fit. And it's probably pretty close to their floor, because I think they're going to be in a lot of games. I think they have a lot of good players. I think their offense will get better, but it's hard with a rookie quarterback, especially the way Caleb Williams plays. It's not your standard sort of pocket quarterback. It's easy to sort of build around. He has a lot of really good plays, but also I think he's gonna have to learn the speed of the NFL, like most rookies. So going to the Vikings, they also won. Sam Darnold played very well. Benefits to have a team that's a little more put together than like the Jets and the Panthers. Maybe not a strong starting caliber, but definitely considering the positions the Vikings found themselves in, there's definitely a lot worse backup options. I don't see them having sustained success this year with what they have to do, but moderately sort of well considering. And I think they finish 7-10 this year. I think they beat on a bad team. I think they have that ability, which is good, but not where you need to be in terms of like making an actual playoff push. And then lastly, the Packers, they lost a really close game. I'm really high on the Packers, but unfortunately that Jordan Love injury is just going to hold them back. And I see them going 10-7. I think without that, I think they're probably more of an 11-12 win team. I know there's some rumors of maybe Ryan Tannehill. I don't know if that'll happen. And even if it does, I don't really know how quickly he could learn the offense. But I can see them finishing 10-7 with a big push in the second half of the season. If he can come back maybe week 4, ceiling is a little higher, but then I'd be worried about re-injury or really how mobile he is. I think his mobility within the pocket and scrambling out and finding people on those slants and going across the middle of fields wide open. I think that's something that we really overlooked. And going back to Rodgers when he was younger, that was what he was doing too. So I can definitely see sort of that through line there with sort of the Packers quarterbacks. Okay, so lastly, let's talk about the NFC South. The Buccaneers, they had a dominating win and showed them once again to be in line to win the division. I don't see the Bucs as a top 4 team in the NFC, but they'll definitely win the division. It has a lot of mediocre teams, have them finishing 10-7. The Saints did win, but it was against the Panthers, so I think they, again, will have a more mediocre season. Their defense may keep them in certain games, but they're going to have a much more big play ability than they had in the last few seasons. I still have them finishing 9-8. Good portion of those wins coming in the division. The Falcons are like a hard team to read. A lot of this projection is based off of them riding with Kirk Cousins and letting Penix learn the speed of the NFL, but with a rookie head coach and ownership that may not be patient, I could see them meddling a little bit, maybe putting Penix out there sooner than I probably would. I think if they ride with Cousins, see them as an 8-9 team, but if they pull the plug, after going 1-3, 1-4, any of that kind of stuff, they could be a lot lower. I think the Falcons may want to prep for the future, considering the NFC is more competitive this year, but if that's the case, giving Cousins that deal doesn't really make sense. So we'll sort of see what happens with that. And then lastly, we have the Panthers. This, deal for Bryce Young is looking worse and worse. I know that we've talked about it a lot earlier in the video, so I don't want to rehash all of that, but the team looks like the worst team in the league right now. Bryce knows that his team isn't that good, and he's sort of forcing throws and doesn't look comfortable at all. And, as a young player, having to learn a brand new system, may have pushed him back a little bit. And this ownership group kind of seems like a mess. I don't see the plan. I don't know what team they're trying to be. I don't know what their offensive philosophy is. I think it might be time to hit the reset button, organizationally, with some of what they're doing, and maybe come up with a 3-year team rebuild plan and plan around some sort of philosophy. So, fortunately for Panthers fans, it doesn't look great. So there we have it. There's the Week 1 review and my final schedule projections based off of what we've seen so far. I'm really trying to build something fun here, so let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe and like and share, and so we can get this out to more people. And I look forward to seeing what happens in Week 2, and we'll join you for the Week 2 review and updated schedule predictions.